Good morning. Good morning. Did you all have breakfast? Yes. What did you have for breakfast? We're going to talk a lot about food and agriculture and the systems and the politics and the perspectives here today. And we couldn't do that without a great crowd, so thank you for showing up. Thank you for participating here at CropLife America's 5th annual National Policy Conference in the fabulous museum. How many of you have been to the museum before? And how many of you have been to a National Policy Conference for CLA before? Okay, well, a good blend, a great mix. I'm Jay Vroom. I'm president of CropLife America. It's my pleasure to get us kicked off here. We're starting just a little bit behind schedule, but I'm going to catch us up real fast. So, first order of business in terms of mechanics. Anybody not have a smartphone? Get it out, turn it on, and tweet. We've given you a little card to instruct on how to connect to our NPC hashtag. We'd love to have all of you participating live in person here today, but also virtually using Twitter or Facebook or any other social media venue that is your preference. Also remember to silence those devices so that we can show respect to all of our panelists and speakers and not have those irritating noises buzzing off at inopportune moments. So our National Policy Conference has been a really unique forum these past 4 years and promises to be again today for an exchange of civil conversation about a wide range of views associated with the sustenance of life, which is food and certainly water. So I know today, looking at the attendee list, that we've got an even more diverse crowd here today than we've had in the previous 4 years. And that's really great because we want to hear from all of you. So there are microphones around the room. We encourage you to, at the appropriate invited moments, hopefully, you can restrain yourselves and wait for that moment to engage with our panelists and moderators during our program time, but also during our breaks and at lunch, so that we can get that dialogue going and meet new people, make the opportunity to renew acquaintances, and to really just have an opportunity to learn from each other. So there are no PowerPoint slide presentations today, no talking heads, no lectern up here on the podium for someone to stand and just lecture. This is an opportunity for a two-way dialogue, both here in person and for those of you who are watching on the World Wide Web to participate virtually as well. So we just saw the video here with men and women on the street talking about what they ate for breakfast and what their perspectives are about where that food came from and what their thoughts or concerns or aspirations are for what they all ate. So what did you eat this morning? I fortunately got by and grabbed some watermelon, a couple of great grapes, some blueberries, and because I'm a risk taker, I even had some cantaloupe this morning. So did you think, as you were having breakfast, about not only what you were eating, but where did it come from? How was it grown? How many different people and corporations, big and small, might have been engaged in the process of actually getting that food here for us to enjoy at breakfast this morning? Probably not, because we take our food for granted. And that's really part of the problem here today in this country and I would say in much of the rest of the world. We just have the luxury of not having to think about our food. But there is so much that goes into the growing of food, the caring of the land and the environment where the food comes from. It's manufacture in many cases, or processing, storage, transportation, and delivery to supermarkets, and whether you shop at a farmer's market or a huge multinational food store chain. All of that is important about how the food gets to you and how it was produced by the farmer, whether you're, again, a patron of a local farmer's market and you care about supporting local and slow agriculture, organic or conventional, no matter what it is, the system is important and we're in a very sophisticated world when it comes to our food. So we all know the statistics. There are more than 7 billion of us that inhabit this planet today. But more importantly, over 1 billion of us are malnourished, and enough of us went to bed so hungry last night that we won't live to see another sunrise because of disease or associated health effects of not having enough to eat or the right things to eat. Also important is the fact that of the 7+ billion of us, over 1.5 billion of us are measured as obese, and that's a problem. In fact, I heard this morning on the news that the Rand Corporation has a new report that's coming out today that says that the #1 cause of obesity in the United States is that our food is too cheap. Now, we can argue that or discuss that kind of issue today because that's why you're here and that's why we've convened this forum. We also know that over half of the world's farmers on this planet struggle to produce enough to feed their own families. And so that means that the advances of modern agriculture, whether it's conventional farming or the phenomenal advances that we've seen in organic farming, and by the way, organic farmers are customers of our modern crop protection industry, just like conventional farmers. But those modern agricultural techniques haven't reached enough farmers and haven't revolutionized enough agriculture around this planet to make that basic fact right, which is farmers ought to be able to at least feed their own families. So we're going to examine a whole range of things that are on our topic agendas and expertise of the panelists that are arrayed here to share their perspectives with you here today. We'll probably talk about some things that we hadn't planned to talk about because you've got other ideas that you can express as well. So thanks for being here. A few people I want to recognize. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the very faithful and loyal members of CropLife America and our leaders. So we've got a number of board members here led by Vice Chairman Dave Treader and Diane Alamang. Would you guys stand up, please? Thank you for your leadership. You hold your applause for a second. We also have a bunch of our Strategic Oversight Council members led by Chair Gene Reimers and the Chairman of Vice for the SOC, John Cummings. John and Gene, would you guys stand up? Thank you for your leadership. We've also got a great array of friends and partners from outside of our industry. The National Association of Wheat Growers have a number of board members here. I know Paul Wenger, the president of the California Farm Bureau, a former panelist in a previous NPC, is going to join us here today. The Ag Retailers Association, the National Association of Ag Aviators, a bunch of executives from Capitol Hill as Capitol Hill staff, some of you from FDA staff, EPA, USDA. It's a great cross-section of expertise and perspective. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy days to join us. So leading us through, this devolution of agriculture theme today, from his business-minded perspective is our moderator for the day, Ali Velshi. So join me in welcoming Ali to the stage. Ali is host of the nightly primetime show Real Money with Ali Velshi, and in his reporting he examines all facets of our economy, from individual consumer to the largest corporation. He joined Al Jazeera America from CNN, where he was the network's chief business correspondent, anchor of CNN's International World Business Today, and the host of CNN's Weekly Business Roundtable. So if you'd like to know something special about Ali, it's rumored that he's known for exotic socks. So maybe we'll see today, a little extra part of his personality that you don't see when he's sitting there at the desk on international television. That's right. So I asked Ali earlier if he'd heard of Dr. Norman Borlaug, and you said that you hadn't. And I know Julie Borlaug, Norm's granddaughter, plans to stop by and be with us today, but I wanted to present you with a biography of Dr. Borlaug, the father of the Green Revolution, and one of those leaders and visionaries that got us to where we are today. So,
thank you so much
Ali,
for that, Jay.
Welcome, and have a great day.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. I have a disproportionately intimate relationship to food. It doesn't have as much to do with my professional life as it does for some of you. But it actually does. But people have asked me many times, why is it I'm here? And I've moderated other similar things, and nobody really gets the connection. But it does seem that as I cover the news, more and more of it has to do with agriculture these days. And by the way, I'm a financial journalist. But as I've moved, and I did this at CNN, but as I moved to Al Jazeera, where we cover a broader array of things because we have more time and we don't focus on Justin Bieber or missing flights as much, what turns out to be the case is that I cover agriculture. I cover energy, for instance, and when you cover energy, you end up covering agriculture because of the overlap between the two and the shared demand for resources, including water. When we cover drought, when we cover food prices, when we cover matters that Jay was just talking about in terms of nutrition, when we cover income inequality, food comes into play a great deal. I just did a story 2 nights ago on self-milking cows. I know that's not entirely the right term to use, but it's very good for TV. And I did a story on coffee rust, and we do a story on corn prices, and I spent a day during the harvest on a corn farm in southern Illinois. So for some reason, agriculture has become a bigger part of my life, and that's good, because if you want to tell full stories about the economy, you have to understand food. It is a major, major part of our economy. As an economic measure, we use the price of food. In fact, I always find it fascinating when we talk, we have the monthly measure of consumer and wholesale inflation, CPI and PPI, and we always say it's pretty steady if you strip out food and energy. And I get why that's convenient, and I look like Brad Pitt if you strip out hair and good looks. So it's not really all that, we have, like, I don't know anybody or any company that doesn't involve themselves in food and energy. So it's just weird. And this speaks to our first topic, and that is that we are divorced from the reality of our food. And I want to discuss that with my panelists. However, I want to just pick up on something Jay said, social media today. I have tweeted out to my followers that if they have any questions about agriculture or food, experts abound, and this is the day to ask them. My Twitter handle is @Ali Velshi, by the way, just because I like having a lot of friends, so please follow me and tweet me. Say particularly nice things about me. I might get invited back, or at least my bosses might see them. But you can participate in this as well. You don't have to be outside to be tweeting us. It'll actually be, if there are going to be mics, and you can come and ask your questions, and I don't think you're a particularly shy lot, but if you don't feel like you want to get up to a mic, or you are a little shy, or you feel that you'd like to have your question come to us, but you're uncertain as to whether or not where it ranks in the priority of questions, tweet us. Use the hashtag @NPC14, and we will be going through those on a regular basis through the course of the day, and we'd really like to get your engagement in this. As Jay said, we want to have this be a two-way dialogue. By the way, if you're not into tweeting, how many people tweet here? All right, there are a few of you who aren't. We have an old-fashioned email address. Don't really know how that works, but the email address, take this down if you feel like it, npc14@croplifeamerica.org. npc14@croplifeamerica.org. Do it both ways. We'll check the email, we'll check the Twitter. There is a video testimonial area you probably saw as you came in. It's in the walkway behind us through the place where that great breakfast was. Go by for a quick interview. Share some of your impressions from the conference. Share ideas you are pleased that this conference is covering, and share ideas that you think this conference should cover. And to that, going in that direction, we want to start by showing you some conversations we've had with individuals who live farming and agriculture every day, whether they work on a field or do work in an office. So let's call up my panelists, Megan Brown, Dee Dee Darden, and Jesse Hirsch. Jesse's a senior staff writer at Modern Farmer, which means he's not working on a farm on a daily basis, but please.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. That's Now, before I get started with my panelists, I want to show you some footage of everyday consumers responding to questions about agriculture and farming. So let's roll those. All right, these are your panelists. Megan Brown, to my left, is a blogger and a sixth-generation cattle rancher. Dee Dee Darden is a farmer in Virginia. Jesse Hirsch is a senior staff writer at Modern Farmer. And because we are here to talk, to start off with, about impressions or misconceptions of the agriculture industry, I want to start with you, Jesse, because other than me, you're the furthest from the farm on this panel, but you cover it and you know it and you know the industry. So you're at this intersection of what people don't know and what they think about it. And by the way, I know from talking to both of you that you also are on a much more direct basis. You're speaking to people, but once they're talking to you, they've already overcome a couple of misconceptions. So I want to start with you, Jesse. Your biggest, in addressing some of those questions, your biggest sense of what the public's misconceptions or misunderstandings are of farming and agriculture.
Well, sure. Just a little background. Modern Farmer magazine is about a year old, and we started up in upstate New York kind of with the thought that we would do an agriculture-focused magazine for people who are not actually actively involved. They're not farmers. Maybe people who have a little backyard garden or backyard chickens, or have cubicle jobs but have dreams of moving out to the country and starting a farm. So it would be news written for a general interest audience about agriculture and farming and where your food comes from. And honestly, I look at the title of today's panel, The Devolution of Agriculture, and I feel like we started this magazine at a time when, if anything, farming is having a renaissance moment where a lot of people who are very interested in where their food comes from and are excited about learning so much and getting involved are getting to know their farmers and want to get to know their farmers. Yes, there are a lot of misconceptions. I mean, there's misconceptions, for instance, that farmers don't use technology, that they're stuck in yesteryear and kind of this quaint image of, the red barn. And whereas the farmers that I've met are some of the most technologically savvy and social media savvy and very progressive and modern. I think things like that. I think that a lot of people in a lot of America still have some of the old stereotypical views. But that said, I think that's changing. I think that's definitely changing.
Dee Dee, you have you farm a lot of things. Let me just see if I remember. You got soybeans, you got corn, you've got peanuts, you've got some pumpkins. Mm-hmm. Hold on, I'm missing something, right? You've got cotton.
Cotton, yes.
Right. And you, as a result, and you got ham.
You got it. You did good.
There you go. And so, as in part of your industry, you actually have people coming in. You have a shop, a country shop, and you have some tourists, visitors who come through the area. So you sort of encounter people who know enough to go to a farm and a country shop, but don't know everything about what you do.
Right. We're very unique. We're about 5 miles outside of Smithfield, Virginia, and if you've ever heard of Smithfield hams, then you know where I'm coming from. But my husband and I actively farm. We're very lucky in the area that we are, that we can grow. We can go to the field and take any kind of bag we want and grow peanuts, cotton, corn, soybeans, wheat. So we're very fortunate where we live. But also, we run a country store that's been there since 1952. It's been in my husband's family. So we have a lot of interaction with people. And people will come out and they'll want to see a real smokehouse and a real farmer and real people to see where their food comes from. And every once in a while, we'll ask people, where did the hogs come from? Where are your hogs here on the farm? And I'll have to tell them, well, we don't have any hogs on our farm. We buy all our hams from Smithfield Foods. That way, everything is USDA inspected, is fed a good diet, and things like that. Some people that doesn't bother, but some people, they'll walk away. So, you've got that misconception of a factory farm. Another misconception is we have a lot of school children that come out, and we bring them out in the fall, and we'll do hay rides and pumpkin patch. And we try to get the children we have a meet and greet with the cows. We have a little petting zoo. But I finish up the day with a basket full of products that we use every day, from peanut butter to corn flakes to the biggest pair of underwear that I can find, and a dollar bill, because I want those children to know that cotton is in everything that in their clothing and their money, and that everything that they eat, touch, use every day starts with somebody like me. And I think one of the misconceptions in that is corporate farming. Just because two brothers have incorporated, or sisters and family have incorporated, or a father, son have incorporated, does not make them a corporate farm. And I think there's a lot of misconception if it says Jones Farm Incorporated, that's not a big corporation. I mean, do I look like a CEO to you? I mean, you know, I really think that's a real misconception because, you know, most of the farms in our area, a lot of them are incorporated, but they are still family farms. And I think that's a real misconception, and I think we need to do a better job of letting the public know that.
You know, I'm endlessly thinking about how I'm going to deal with these topics on TV, and I can just now see opening up a block with a really big piece of underwear and a dollar bill and say, what do these things have in common?
It works.
Yeah, that's excellent.
You get a good laugh. It's kind of like your socks.
There you go. Which, by the way, when I last did something with farmers and ranchers, and I had similar socks on, somebody pointed out that it's an agricultural product. Megan, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
You do have hogs.
I do.
And then you have a small pig.
I do have
One
a
small pet pig, and I'm thinking there's got to be a lot of tension on that farm between that small pig. Like, I think that must be really easy to discipline that small pig. Every now and then, when the other hogs go to the way that things happen with hogs.
She's not allowed to see that.
Yeah, but if you're ever unruly, you should let her see it. You also have cattle.
I do.
And you do this thing that I was talking about, living in New York. It's kind of weird because I live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And so we've got green markets all over the place all the time. You can always buy things fresh from a farm, and it creates a really neat impression because I also have, how many of you are from Manhattan? All right, very few of you, but have you all heard of Duane Reade? This is the drugstore that's on every block in Manhattan, right? When they've moved into groceries, and they've actually got some stores with produce. So you can actually go in and, you know, when you think Americans think their food comes from the supermarket, I think New Yorkers think it comes from the drugstore. But now, you know, more of us get to see these things, and we go to nicer restaurants, and it's got the name of the farm where the food is coming from. And, you know, so to Jesse's point, I think there is a bit of a renaissance. But when you go into some of the poorer areas around New York, including the Bronx, they're entire food deserts. And they have started a relationship with some farms in upstate New York where they will buy shares and get a basket of food on a regular basis, food that there's just nowhere around the Bronx you can buy. You have a similar thing, not for the same reasons, but you have a system where people can buy shares.
Yes, I do beef shares and pig shares. And there's a reason I do shares, just because there are a lot of regulations in the meat industry. And people, you know, they're very disconnected from meat. It's how many of you have actually been to a cattle ranch? Not many. I mean, okay, well, maybe not. This is not a good room to ask. But the majority of, I don't dress like a cattle rancher for the majority of, you know, whatever. And I'm just an average kid. So, like, I'm walking down the street and someone will start talking to me, and they're like, oh, what do you do? I'm a cattle rancher. And, you know, so they don't get to see that. So back to the meat. So I invite them out to the ranch. They get to see the cows, and, you know, they can pick the cow they want to eat, which some people freaks them out, some it doesn't. So I'll do a custom exempt slaughter, so that way they do not have to leave the cattle ranch. They stay there. So one minute they're eating their grass, happy. The next minute they're just not. But it's a very you know, they don't get stressed. My consumers, my customers can see it. If they want to see how it's done, I am completely transparent. And I think we're missing a lot of that in agriculture. We tend to you know, close our barn doors when the shit hits the fan. We should be doing exact opposite. When something happens, when we have a BSE scare or something, we as farmers need to get on social media. We need to start having conversations. And I think we need to start encouraging our consumers to ask why. Why are we doing this? When I was flying here on the airplane, the whole back of the plane had to see the Megan show. And that was the question. They were like, well, you know, what are you doing this? And I'm like, those are great questions. Ask why. So the CSAs, the community supported agriculture, I have a little garden. I'm trying to do that with a couple of my little friends too. But it's a lot of work. It's more work than me just selling the cattle through a video sale or whatever. But that's what my parents do. So I'm trying to do more of a niche market. I invite people out. They can see it. My blog's really well known. I'm pretty well known in my area. I just want people to talk to me.
It's interesting, Jesse, back to your point about a renaissance. I mean, I cover finance, and I think of a company like Tractor Supply, which has moved into carrying this entire line of things for people who are clearly not really farming for production, but that it's become sort of fashionable. But I worry about what you say when you say we should open our doors. The problem is, for many Americans, the doors only get opened when there is a food scare. And the doors that tend to get opened the things that you see inside them are not attractive. Nobody wants to see. It turns me off food every now and then. And I don't want to suggest that we shouldn't be having those things in the media that show some of the dangers of farming as we conduct it on a very large scale. But at the same time, what's the other side of that, Jesse?
Well, I think that fear of seeing what's behind that dark door is not enough of a reason to not shine a spotlight. I don't think that we should have to wait until there's a huge beef recall, for instance, to know that there was a problem to begin with. And ironically, that's kind of what prompts change is, I think when one of those things happens and everyone gets terrified, then there's this increased scrutiny and people are more and more concerned. And I think that is kind of a motivator for change. I think that once people are like, maybe the system shouldn't have, maybe this is a flawed link in our food system. The next step, of course, is to change things.
Dee Dee?
Our doors are always open. So I really do feel like people do get a different perspective. They see that women are farmers, that we actually do work hard. We're not in a cab tractor all the time, riding around listening to, the GPS or watching the GPS and doing things. So they do get a real hands-on that we actually work. I've had some people that come out and say, oh, this really isn't a hobby, is it? I'm like, lady, this is how I make a living, I didn't get this good tan by, going to the beach, I'm on a tractor and I'm working and I'm outdoors and I'm engaged in what goes on. And so I just think that, like I said, our doors are always open, and we do open up a lot of eyes because people ask questions, and I always try to be honest with people and give them an honest answer when they ask me a question.
What do you, do you capitalize off of the fact that some people are frightened about big farming and how their meat is produced? This is definitely that whole notion about how you go to restaurants and you find out where your meat comes from plays off of things like Food Inc., but this general idea that somehow my food's going to be better if I know where it's coming from, even if I know the name of the place it's coming from.
It's so funny you ask me that. I just got an email from a client saying, my son just saw Food Inc. and he refuses to eat meat unless he can go to the farm. And it would be really easy for me to take advantage of that, and I can't. I have ethics, and I think, I will say, yeah, I'll sell you a beef, but please come out, let me explain, because I'm also a commercial cattle rancher, so, Food Inc., they went to the slaughterhouse. So I do both. So when they can come out and meet me, and when I can show them my cattle, and I kind of explain the whole process,
So you're not interested in doing away with the squeamishness that people will develop by the mass media impressions of food production? You want them to be involved.
I want them to see it.
But one can choose not to see it if
Exactly.
they like.
That's the big thing. If you want to see it, it should be there. If you don't want to see it, we shouldn't make them.
Very interesting. One of the topics that came up in the misconceptions or conceptions about the food, the question about whether the United States should be responsible for feeding the world. I remember, I was reminded of this last night because there's a new Prime Minister in India, and I was speaking to a gentleman, a professor who was involved in all of the reforms in India. And when we were young, India was the example of the place that was not going to be able to feed itself. It was the example of poverty, extreme poverty, and food insecurity. And what you all know and what we know now is that there is enough food produced in the world. It's not distributed evenly, but it's there. We can actually feed everyone in the world. Jesse, when you talk about the farming renaissance, one of the things that's interesting is the increase in production, in effectiveness, in yield, which sort of takes away from that little red barn idea because farming has got to be a very efficient practice these days. Do people understand that necessity?
I think they do. There was that guy who was interviewed in the video who was talking about how everything is so automated now that it used to be his grandparents were up at 6 a.m. and working these crazy hours, and that automation has led to kind of an easy, like a cushier life for the farmer, which I think that is not something that I see. I think farmers are working just as hard as they always were. I mean, yes, technology improves yields, and it allows you to have, for less people to manage a larger amount of land. However, things have definitely, farming is still a very difficult life, I think, no matter what, no matter how you look at it.
How has technology improved your life?
Me? Oh my gosh, we couldn't farm without it. I would ask everyone in this room, if you put away your iPhone or your iPads, how would you function? To me, if you took away the technology and the advancements in seed traits, we couldn't function. There's a lot of talk about GMOs, and I look at GMOs as to a farmer are as important as your iPhones are to you. We need them. We need that technology. Today, a cotton picker that picks cotton on demand and bales it and drops it out in the field costs about $600,000. Well, you better be pretty efficient in what you're doing. Fertilizer costs have gone up. Seed costs have gone up. It's hard to get. You can't just hire anybody off the street to put them in a $600,000 cotton picker. Tractors cost $300,000. Anything with steel or metal is expensive. For our fuel cost. You know, we're more efficient with no-till and things like that we're doing, but everything we go to do costs more than what it did 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And so we've got to be efficient to keep up with the demand. You know, when we go to that lender and he says, well, how did you do? Well, we did pretty good. And we've got to have that relationship. We've got to have that efficiency so we can keep doing what we want to do.
Do you find that consumers who come to visit you, I mean, obviously they're curious about what you're showing them. You've built this farm that is interesting to see, for people to see, because you do a lot of different things. Do they ask you questions that do seem political about GMOs or about organic, or, you know, do they?
We do. We'll get a lot of questions about GMOs, and there's a lot of misconception about that. And I try to tell them that, you know, GMO is just a technology advancement. I try to tell them about the safety of GMOs, and so like with cotton and things like that we use less pesticides. So really, in the long run, what we're doing, technology has made things really better for our environment. And I think when you get that message, and they're like, oh, really? You know, and they don't, you know, it's just a lot of misconception.
But Jesse, part of this renaissance in, you call it farming, but I'm going to say in food.
Sure.
Particularly amongst urban dwellers who are, you know, forming the majority, although there was a census report out this morning to say that the latest census has showed an actual slight move to out of urban areas. But generally speaking, we're on an urbanization trend. And that does seem to go hand in hand with organic. It seems the more prosperous you are and the wealthier you are, you want your food to be organic.
Okay, yes. I think that there's definitely a movement to have more organic food. And yes, it's always brought up that it has not been proven that organic food is going to be any healthier as far as your daily nutrients and what you're taking into your system. That's true. But I think that conscious consumers who are making the move towards organics are making that decision based on the health, maybe not necessarily of themselves, but of the planet, not using the different products that would lead to long-term environmental harms.
Do you get this
Organics.
Discussion about organic and not organic?
Absolutely, all the time. And, you know, I just tell people, you know, there's room for all of us. And I think, again, they need to ask why they're going organic, but we're not quite there yet. But there totally is room. And, you know, we need our natural, we need our organic, we need our conventional. It's just, you know, there's room for all of us, and we all kind of have to find our niche.
But do you find you get pressed into taking a view on it and having an opinion?
Sometimes. I try not to say it out loud too often.
Just amongst us girls.
Just amongst us girls. Well, okay. Personally, we wouldn't go organic. Just for our ranch, it just wouldn't work for us. You know, I do have friends that are organic, and I support them, and I think they're wonderful, but it is a lot of work, and I don't really see the return often enough. We're natural, certified natural, and that really works for us. But what I do like about organic, especially with animals, a lot of it is, you know, preventative, and I like that, and I think that's really important to keep your animals healthy so they won't get sick. So I've actually kind of stolen that idea from organic and kind of cherry-picked the best of all of the production methods for our ranch, and I think it really works. And that's what I try and tell my friends and my consumers is, you know, you can blend these methods, and it doesn't have to be black or white.
That's much more nuanced than the response I get on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, where people cannot imagine that I would consume anything that's not organic. Of course, they've understood what I consume. They just wouldn't talk to me. Generally speaking, I don't consume anything that's not fried. So I want to ask you, Dee Dee, it didn't come up a lot in the video, but maybe because we didn't ask that question very specifically. But this business about working sun up to sundown and hard work and people doing things on farms that they're happy other people are doing because they wouldn't want to do it. I think largely that's very true. I think there are a breed of people who are okay with working very long hours outdoors. How big a deal is labor, and how much of a problem is labor for you?
Labor in our area, well, really, basically, it's my husband and I. We're very fortunate. We've got some retired neighbors who want a hobby, so they come out and help us. And and we're not that large a farmer, but for some areas, labor is a real issue. I think if I were a vegetable grower or something like that in some of those areas, labor is a huge problem. And so in our area, it's not particularly. Not really a problem. Although if I have some weeds in a field and you want to go out and pull some weeds, you can't get anybody who wants to help you. You know, nobody wants to go out there in the sun and spend a couple of hours, and you know, it's like I don't want to get my hands dirty, or I don't want to get a callus, or so you know, it really is an issue.
It's a real issue in California. You know, most of our fruits and nuts come from California, and anyway, and getting labor. You can't get a college-educated kid out there picking anything. We won't do it. We're lazy. So it's really, really a big issue in California. Not particularly in my industry, but in others. My friends talk about it a lot, and it's kind of terrifying.
Do they say what they'd like done about it?
They'd want more labor. I mean, the laws are, you know, it's hard.
So the idea that they could use migrant labor, because generally speaking, those are the folks who are prepared to work for the money that's paid.
They're pretty much the only folks that will do it.
That remains a massive area of disagreement and misconception in America. I mean, that's the one that we've done a very big series on immigration at Al Jazeera, particularly focusing on migrant workers from south of the border. And once you see the whole picture, you understand it. But we feel that I don't know how that's going to get fixed, because everybody I talk to in agriculture tells me this is a major problem, and everybody I talk to who's not in agriculture says it's a major problem for another reason. Your blog gives the impression that technology is a smaller part of the way you for 6 generations have done farming. Is that true, or is it just that you show the pictures of you on the horses with the cows that's different from the machinery that goes and feeds the cows?
You know, I'm really, really lucky actually to be born when I was born. I got to, you know, meet the older generation, and I'm the new generation, but I kind of got to be in the middle where we use technology. I still have the tractor my grandpa bought. I'm not allowed to drive it anymore because it pollutes so much, but my dad bought a new one, and it's amazing. And it has a radio and a cab, and I don't get sunburned, and it's just amazing. The other one, I'm out there going like this all day, and it sucks, and I hate it. But with cattle, actually, the genetic side, and I don't talk about this enough on my blog, we went from when I was a young girl, maybe having weaning weights of 500 pounds, to right now where we're pushing 1,000. And we're not doing anything different, we're not feeding anything different, we're not giving implants, it's all genetics. We've learned how to buy better stock, breed them, and we're really working with that, and it's really been amazing. And we're, you know, now we can go back to the slaughterhouses, and they can give us the percentage of how our cattle graded, and you know, we grade really high. They come back to us year after year. Technology is amazing, and farmers use it, but we need to talk more about it, obviously.
And you don't talk about it. Why? Do you think that makes people a little squeamish? That you're engineering the stuff guys like me just want to see the final product.
Well, a lot of people, I mean, in cattle, they don't understand, and they don't want to understand. Like on the plane,
Do you want them to?
I do.
What would it do for me as the consumer to know more about the stuff that you do, other than the fact that I want to be informed, but does it do anything? Does it help you in the decisions that you need made, or with the political decisions that have to happen, if I know more about literally the sausage being made?
Yes, it does immensely. You guys, my consumers vote with their dollars. They also vote for regulations that, affect me, won't really affect them. But the more I get them out there, the more I talk to them, the more they understand, and it does help me a lot. The better job I do, which I'm not doing a good job of talking about technology, and I feel like we need to, like GMOs, people are terrified of them. They don't understand them. I actually, I was an ag major. I'm a farmer rancher, and I actually had to go down to Monsanto and take a tour to learn more. And it was the best thing I did, because now I actually know what I'm talking about. I can go into a room and say, well, I've actually been to Monsanto. I've also been to the UC Davis organic farm. Let's talk about it. What are your questions? And I think we need to really start doing that.
Good you said that, because Monsanto's bugging the room. Jesse.
They paid me to say that.
They're bugging.
Kidding.
They bug every room. Jesse, there was one comment on there where a woman was being asked about the safety of food. Sure. And I thought the answer was very interesting. She said, I don't think it's a public health issue, but I worry that our food isn't safe. I'm paraphrasing. And I thought I sort of got what she was saying. She doesn't generally feel that great swaths of Americans are going to die from some foodborne illness. And yet she doesn't believe the food system is safe. Did you get some sense of what she was talking about, whether that might be a common thread?
Yeah, I think definitely it's about the public feeling like there's not enough transparency in the food that we eat, like you were saying before, Megan. For one thing, when you eat processed food, there's so many ingredients on those labels that people have no idea what they're actually consuming. So I think that's part of it. What are we putting into our bodies? I don't understand this. And then the system itself is kind of opaque. People, when one of these scares comes out, we find out, oh, this is the way that the system was run. This is how my meat was produced, and this is how it got on my table. And it's kind of an aha moment. And I think that she was speaking to that in a lot of ways, that we just don't know enough. And it takes something scary to make us start knowing things.
What is the transition one goes to? One of your readers, for instance. I mean, there wasn't a magazine like this before you got involved, before you did it. Now there is. What is the evolution of your reader? What did they know? Where were they not where they are now?
I think our readers are, at least at this point, I mean, we've only been around for about a year, and at this point, I think that we're speaking to a lot of people who are within a certain bubble already, people who are shopping at farmers markets and have already expressed some sort of interest in knowing about food production. What we're hoping is that if and when this magazine gets bigger and more mainstream, that it'll bring more and more people into the conversation that didn't have any idea before the answers to a lot of these questions. We tackle a lot of different things. We tackle GMOs, for instance, and we try not to have a political stake in that. We try to look at both sides of all of these different issues just to create a more informed consumer. And I think eventually a more informed consumer is someone who shops more consciously.
What is the non-political view on GMO?
Well, that's not a loaded question at all. That at this point, for the most part, there have not been any conclusive studies that say that genetically modified food will have any lasting damaging effects to your health. And you put that on one side, and then you put it on the other side, where the people who are fervently against genetically modified food, one way or the other, it's such a hot button issue, and they're just saying, look, we don't want it. Whether or not there can be conclusive studies saying that this is a bad thing, a lot of people have rejected genetically modified food, at least in their own mind and with their own pocketbooks, and it's a very entrenched debate. It's very difficult to find some kind of middle ground between the people on both sides of that issue. So that's what we try to cover at Modern Farmer, is to look at the two sides and the reasons why the conversation is not more productive, why there's such a huge gap between people who are against it and people who are for it, things like that.
Why do you think the conversation lacks? I mean, there's few things in the world of agriculture that are that polarizing.
I think that as an industry, we have done a really poor job in talking about GMOs. When we have let people like Dr. Oz be the so-called expert, then we really haven't done what we should be doing. I think that I had an opportunity, I was on the National Peanut Board, and when we first got started, there was a lot of misconceptions about peanut allergies. Everybody thought there were at least 15% of everybody in this country had peanut allergies. It was less than 2%. So we had an education issue. But we also had an issue that we were growing peanuts and we wanted to promote peanuts, but yet we were promoting something that was, for some part of the population, that was very unhealthy. So we decided to put money into peanut allergy research. We formed a scientific advisory committee, and we had scientists from Canada, United States, and England all doing research. We got them together as a panel. And you know, all these big companies out here in this room, you all need to get together. Take some of our technology money that we pay you when we buy those seeds and put some of that money together and get a panel of independent scientists and let them talk about GMOs. It shouldn't come from Monsanto, or it shouldn't come from them, because nobody's going to believe them. But get some independent scientists and let them be a spokesperson, not Dr. Oz, and then Oprah kicking in and telling what she thinks. So, you know, that's what I think we need to do.
Hey, Monsanto, she wasn't saying bad things about you.
No.
Do you care? Okay, so I want to pick up on something Jesse said. These farmers markets, right? They're all around me in the city. When someone goes to one of those things and they're connecting, for us city slickers, it's a great way to connect. It feels like, wow, I've got something to do with it. There's like actually dirt on my lettuce. Do you care, like, is that a good development that they're doing that because they're understanding where their food is coming from? Or does that sort of skip the process? In other words, is it bad for me to think that now my food should come from a farmer's market, and in fact I shouldn't? So now food that gets bought from a grocery store is inferior to that?
I don't think so. I think we also do a farmer's market, and we'll take products there. I think.
But you sell food into the commercial food chains as well, right?
We're just at our local farmer's market. We'll take sweet corn or tomatoes or some things like that. But I think just the consumer builds trust with you. Mm-hmm. And it's not so much that it's safer or it's organic or it's this or it's that, but it's a trust. And they like, oh, well, Dee Dee, you grow these. I know that these are good. They didn't come from 50 miles away, or they came from my farm, or they came from a neighbor's farm. I think it's a matter of trust. And I think that's what you build up at a farmer's market or through a CSA or something like that, is the trust that you build up with the consumer. And that's what they just want. Sometimes they just want face-to-face interaction of where it came from. We have people that come back year after year to get a ham because they've always bought one. It's a tradition. And so that's what they want to do, and they want their children to be able to do that.
The meat you produce goes into the commercial food system.
Yes.
Is that right? So what's your sense of this? I mean, is it better that people come and get their meat from your farm that you custom butcher for them? Or is it better that, you know what I'm trying to get at? Do we want to change people's impression? Do we want to have people saying, unless I can look the farmer in the eyes, my food's not as good? Because you need people to believe in the food system when they go to the grocery store.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I think it's important to have both. Like, you know, I do have clients that come back year after year and they swear mine's the best beef in the whole wide world. They'll never go elsewhere. And I love that, but it might not always be the best beef. I'm sure there's another rancher doing just as great as a job. But, you know, I also think it's important they can go to the store, because not everybody wants to know their farmer. Not everybody cares, you know. There is a big group, and there is a food renaissance going on, and I have been trying to ride that wave and do the best I can, and I hope it continues. But I don't think that we need to go back to purely farmers markets. I mean, I think we're a society that likes our, you know, we'd like to go to the grocery store. You know, when I worked full time, I liked to go get fast food and take it home and go to bed because I was tired. You know, it's not going to be a simple answer. It's not going to be farmer's market, that's it. But I do agree with you totally that they really like to meet their farmer. They do like to know where their food comes from. They don't need to see the whole process, but just to put a face on their product. You know, I think it means a lot to them. It means a lot to me. I mean, I'm a consumer as well.
I'm going to open it up to questions from the floor. I know a lot of you will have opinions or questions that you want to ask or views on your own. So for some of you who are in related fields, I invite you to go to the mic and tell us what your impressions are of some of the questions we've been discussing. I have to say, I think Dee Dee, that accountability, that looking you in the eye, becomes bigger when there's some kind of problem out there. Mm-hmm. Right? So when we realize that people get sick off of something and it takes us days to figure it out and it's moving from state to state and we can't get an answer I all of a sudden think, well, if I knew where I got my food from, then I could just come to you and say, my child is sick. Was there something, anybody else sick that bought your stuff?
That's
Do you,
right.
do you have those issues ever? Have you had people come, you ever had a situation where people come back to you and said something's wrong and you found 3 or 4 people sick?
Fortunately, I have not. But again, if we did, we would face it head on and try to handle it best we could.
I've got a question off of Twitter. It says, has the small farmer been, and this is for both of you, has the small farmer been relegated to niche markets? Does catering to high-end preferences lead to counterproductive regulation?
We're finding in our meat industry more and more regulations. Through the Virginia Department of Agriculture, we've had to go through a lot of hoops this year to be able to do what we've been doing for over 50 years. But it's too much of an important part of what we do not to do it. So you jump through those hoops and do what you've got to do, bite your tongue, and try to meet the regulations.
I think some regulations are definitely a good thing. Consumers do like to know that there are safety nets, and their food is being looked at by a third party. Like in the beef industry, there's a lot of third party verifications, and it's kind of getting annoying because it's kind of getting a whisper ridiculous. There's so many of them, but I do think on a smaller scale, it's a great thing. It's a third party verification saying this is a good product, it's safe.
How do you talk to consumers about pesticides and pests? What scares consumers about those subjects?
I think what scares them is the residue that might be left over and things like that. But we try to tell them that I read the labels, and we can't afford to use them incorrectly because they're too expensive. And I think that's one thing that we try to do. We try to use them the best way we can. When the weather is right and the conditions are right, and the waiting periods and things like that. So, I feel if I'm educated and we use the product correctly, I can convey that.
Yeah, and I try to do the same thing with my beef because we obviously give them vaccinations. And I explain to them, well, I give them this vaccination so they don't get sick, so I don't have to give them antibiotics. But if I do give them antibiotics, there is a withdrawal time. I put a tag in their ear, and I don't sell them as natural. And I think it's important that we kind of get that out there, and.
And do you think the questions most people ask you, to what degree are your consumers, your direct consumers, informed? On a scale of 1 to 10, if 10 were as informed as a farmer.
My consumers right now, they're pretty awesome. They follow me on my blog and the Twitter and all the social media, and they are actually really into my day-to-day thing. If I don't post a picture of a cow in a few days, they're like, Megan, what's going on? I need a cow. Yeah.
What's the benefit of the blog, other than, I'm sure you enjoy it.
Yeah.
What does it do?
Well, I'm here. It's really, really, it's me.
Touche.
Yeah. I have the Megan platform now, so I have thousands of people that listen to me, and I've been doing it for 5-6 years now. And in the very beginning, I was horrible. I was, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about, and that got me a big fat nowhere. And as I developed and got better at what I was doing, I started asking them why. Okay, why do you think this? What do you think I should do? And that connection, it really has helped. Even just my local county, I get blog recognized when I go grocery shopping, and they're like, hey, come over here. What about this meat? How do I cook this? What do I do with this? And it's kind of awesome. I kind of dig it.
What is the I looked at it. I didn't get a chance to get through a lot of comments. I see you get a lot of comments. Mm-hmm. What are they mostly about? What are the topics that people want to know? Is it about your daily life? Is it about meat? What is it about?
Most of it's just kind of day-to-day life, just because every day is an adventure. Right before I came here, I kind of have a raspy voice because there was a big-ass rattlesnake on my front step, and I had a puppy and a teacup pig, and I was screaming for my mom for help because I didn't want anybody getting bit, and I wrote a blog about that. And people, that really happens every day. But they want to know about beef. They want to know about how my beef is produced, how it gets to market. I actually did a blog a couple years ago about custom exempt slaughter. I showed the whole thing. My industry got really mad at me. They said, you can't show that. And I said, well, I think we need to. And that's kind of what put me on the map with my blog. And that's probably one of my biggest blogs to date. But people wanted to know. They said, wow, we didn't know this was even an option. We didn't know we could buy directly from you. And after that, it was pretty awesome, and I liked it.
You obviously, Dee Dee, don't suffer from the issue of people being squeamish generally about what you do. But to what extent are there? Is there anything about what you do that people don't want to see or they react badly to?
Well, if we go around with the school kids and we'll stop at with the cows, and I might, if this depends on the group, I might tell them that's their potential Happy Meal. Some of the parents get a little, they might get a little squeamish, but I try to tell them that they're not pets. They are part of what we do. They are part of our farming experience is growing livestock. And so, yes, it's not always pretty. And yes, we have named some of the cows, and we cry when they die and all those kind of things, but we're in part of it. But it is a part of reality that we grow these animals to take them to the market, and that's just part of what we do.
I think one thing, the emotion, when we talk about the emotion, when we talk about, I raised these pigs and I love them, I've had them for 8 months, I got attached to them. I cry, but they're my little buddies. But I also realize, this is my job. I'm making food for the rest of us. But I think if we have that emotional connection with our animals and we do show that to our consumers, that means a lot to them.
It's part of the reason you got a teacup pig, because your
I did.
father wouldn't let you keep the.
No, he would not let me
The other pigs.
I wanted to keep my pigs because I got really attached to them, which was a mistake. It was the first year I'd done pigs since I was a little kid. And I actually did an adult 4-H program. I had my urban girlfriends come out and we raised pigs together. And they were never in 4-H. They'd never done it before. So I was like, come on, ladies. And we did it. And we raised these pigs. But they turned into pets because we were like, oh my gosh, so much fun. And then so I did it. And then I got my little teacup pig, Silly, and she lives in my house with me, and I'm that girl.
We have an email question. I don't know who it's from because I want to know more about the question. So if you're in the room, feel free to go up to the mic. But the question is, what is the role of the media in perpetuating negative perceptions of food? I must just be reading the wrong media because my perceptions of food are all fantastic.
Yourselves.
But Jesse, let's ask about that. What is the role of the media? Do you think that the media perpetuates negative perceptions of food? In fact, hold on, don't answer that. Do you think that the media perpetuates negative impressions of food? Show me your hands if you do. Huh. We're totally reading the wrong things. Jesse?
Well,
First of all, if you want to go with the crowd, I'd say yes.
yeah, let's say all media except for Modern Farmer. I think that definitely if it bleeds, it leads. Television news and to some extent print newspapers, like we say, people who maybe are not that actively involved and asking the questions about where their food comes from are only hearing about it when there's a spinach recall because there's E. coli. And that's probably not really a fair way to look at our food production system because it's not taking in all of the great things that are happening, all of the progress that's been made. It's just one small slice of it, and that's in a lot of ways because that's the way news sells. I mean, the scariest things are the things that people want to read about so that they can, tell all their friends and be terrified all the time. But that said, I mean, I think that my magazine, what we try to do is just give a more balanced perspective so that it's not just about the things that will make you fearful at the end of the day about how your food is made.
Well, look at any social media stream, like my Facebook. My Facebook is awesome. It's half farmers and half just regular people. The farmers are always like, okay, this is what we're doing. And then I have my friends that are, a few special friends that always post, there's fish genes and tomatoes and we're gonna die. And those are the people I try and talk to. And my social media is big, and it's not always about talking to that one person with the question. It's the lurkers on the side that are quietly looking at you and getting information from you. They might not want to ask that question, but they're still watching and they're still learning.
Dee Dee, I'll let you hit that. What's your general? Do you have a sense that the media is
focused
on the negative?
I think negative news always makes a better headline than good news. If the headline read "Farmers are happy in America," then so what? Big deal. But farmers are going to go on strike because of such and such, then that makes headlines. So, but
Y'all should watch Al Jazeera. It's all good stuff about food and agriculture.
And Modern Farmer.
Yep.
Hi, Ted Menzies, CropLife Canada, and a longtime farmer in southern Alberta in Canada. I have a question. I'd like your observations. How do we turn the acceptance of this type of technology that's been broadly accepted around the world. How do we translate that into the acceptance of biotechnology improvements in food production that are actually going to feed the world? And a lot of the discussions here today are pretty superficial. We consumed a little bit of breakfast this morning as we walked through there, and we left a lot of food sitting on that table. There's 830 million people in the world that woke up this morning without having enough food to eat. What we're talking about here today is a bit elitist. I always maintain that the technologies that we can and should accept here for growing better crops, drought-tolerant crops, that technology is far easier to export to the developing countries than it is to export the food that we produce. Why can't we accept that to be able to develop that technology to help the rest of the world? We accept this, but we don't accept technology that grows more food.
We're not hungry.
I like your comments. Good point. We're not hungry enough.
Why should we? We're not hungry. It doesn't affect us. Like when I talk to my friends, I've got to do a little bit of traveling in my life, and I got to see some pretty eye-opening things that definitely got my attention. Many of my friends haven't got to see that. They haven't seen hunger. They won't read the news about starving children in Africa. It's not real to them. So why should we do it? Why? It doesn't help us.
Ted, I don't know who I was telling last night that we do a lot of stuff on water on Al Jazeera, whether it's fracking and leases on ranches and farms, or it's just drought and water shortages. It's very hard to sell right here in the Northeast because nobody in the Northeast hasn't had water. Nobody on the Northeast even thinks about the fact there's so. Never mind other countries. We're not hungry. We can't even conceive what Californians and Texans and Arizonans are going through with drought. So it's interesting. Your point is very, very valid. The technology exists. One of the best books I've read in the last few years is Abundance by Peter Diamandis. I don't know if anybody read that book. You should read it. Peter Diamandis is the founder of the X Prize, and it just talks about the fact that with our technologies, if we shared them, food is one of the areas, but it's just all about innovation. That there wouldn't be those people waking up hungry.
I'm glad you brought up the drought. It's serious in California. It's very serious, and I think we do produce a lot of the nation's food. So I think it will be interesting this year to see how prices and availability are affected, and this might
change people's minds.
It might be a good thing.
Right. Well, we've seen with the coffee rust prices in California, in New York City, up almost 25 cents for a cup of coffee in the city. But again, you're dealing with urban, generally speaking, prosperous markets where people will pay another quarter for the coffee. They're not going to actually not buy the coffee. So you don't feel it. We don't feel agriculture, Jesse, and that's possibly part of this whole thing. That those of us who feel it because we encounter it, because we live in places where it's become fashionable to do so. Is that renaissance you're talking about across the board, or is it?
Well, I think that there's more mainstream acceptance of it, and more people looking at it than you might imagine. I mean, look at Tom Vilsack just spoke to some sort of organic board yesterday, I believe, and Walmart is having organic food. I think that it kind of trickles down. I mean, these things bubble up in urban areas, but that's typically just the way that it starts. And I'm not saying that in 5 years that the United States will have gone all organic. I'm just saying that that's kind of a sign of the fact that people are paying more attention to these things and where their food is coming from.
Dee Dee, you were mentioning you have people coming in from other countries who take a look at your farm and come to the store. Is that just for tourism, or are any of them farmers?
Most of it's tourism. We had a lot of people that when the Chinese company bought it, Smithfield Foods, they came in and wanted to know the impact of somebody like us as a local person, what we thought it would do to our community, what it would do to us, our ability to buy hams and products from Smithfield Foods and things like that. So, yeah, the world is watching, but I think most young people today that have kids, they're so busy, they don't know. My son and daughter, if they don't have it on their iPad where they're going to this ball game, that ball game, this school event, they don't know what's going on. And unless it comes on Facebook, they don't know what's happening in the world. We could have a bomb that could explode in the next county over, and they wouldn't know about it. Because if it's not on Facebook, and that's how they get their news. And that's real unfortunate. And I think they're more typical than not. But until it affects you personally, it really, in most cases, it doesn't matter.
I do think that's the common thread here, that the idea, the renaissance of an interest in agriculture and food is to some degree born out of the fact that you think it's better for you, or that the media has told you about a spinach problem. You bring up an interesting point about Smithfield and the Chinese. How does that affect you? And let's just give a little background here. Tell us a story about Smithfield hams and what something has to be a Smithfield.
Well, in order to be a Smithfield ham, it has to be cured in the town limits of Smithfield. We live about 5 miles outside of town, so ours cannot be called a Smithfield. Ours is a country type ham, just like a Vidalia onion, so they branded it, which was very smart. They did that back in the late 20s, early 30s. When the Chinese company came and they took over Smithfield, everybody says, "Oh, we're not going to buy any more Smithfield food products anymore." Well, if it doesn't necessarily say Smithfield to be a Smithfield product, because they own so many different companies. So a lot of people are that. But our son works at Smithfield, and so his take on it was that it would be a good thing because the Chinese diet is growing. They want more protein in their diet. They're going to buy. They're not going to eat the hams and the loins and the pork chops. They'll eat some of the lesser cuts. And with the Chinese company owning Smithfield, it would open more markets for us to take more food into China. And also, as a corn and soybean farmer, hopefully it would expand some of the operations here, and we could grow more food for the pigs. So we hope that it's a long and happy marriage with Smithfield. We're very fortunate that we have them there, but it's like with any big takeover, you don't know what's going to happen till it happens, and then it's too late.
And how does it affect because you sell these country-style hams?
It hasn't affected us in any way. It hasn't affected us in any way.
In fact, you get some benefit from the fact that people who want one of those Smithfield hams can't see them being smoked?
Well, just a lot of people like to come in and experience what a smokehouse looks like.
Yeah.
They remember maybe going to their grandmother's farm or grandfather's farm, and everybody had a smokehouse. They walk in there and they smell that aroma of that wood, the hickory smoked wood on the walls, and they'll say, "Oh, it smells just like grandma's." And so, it kind of takes them back, and it gives them a nice memory. Smell is a wonderful thing, how it triggers memories, and sometimes, and so it does kind of take them back, and they say, "Oh, this is the way it looked on the farm," and so they have a little nostalgia moment, and we try to create that now and then for new generations, to come out. So,
All right, I want to go a little further with Ted's question. If we were to say, forget what you think the media's perceptions are of food and agriculture. If we were, as the media, to convey the really important issues in agriculture, so wipe the slate clean and say, this is what we should be discussing. And I don't mean this to be promotional, but these are the issues that are really important that are going to face us and the world and our ability to produce food over the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. What would you say? What is the undiscussed issue, or the issue that's not discussed enough that you'd like to see discussed more in mainstream media?
It's a good question. I think natural resources, every day, especially in California, the urban sprawl, the water, right now we're doing a lot more with a lot less, and I don't see that changing. We're not going to get more natural resources. And I think we really, really, really need to start that dialogue and say how important to save what we have left and to conserve and to get better. And, I think that's what we really need to start talking about now.
And I think hopefully this is one of the jobs we're doing at Al Jazeera. That's a very big topic for us because, as I say, our main markets tend to be in the Northeast, and our main problems with water, but amongst other things, other natural resources and the competition for it, don't tend to be in the Northeast. So we're trying to get this very, very big audience around here, which is where most mainstream media caters, other than sort of LA and a few other spots, to understand this issue of natural resources. But Dee Dee, as you say, until it affects you, it just doesn't affect me.
Right.
That some farmer in Texas has water problems and has had them for the last 7 years because somehow my food still gets to the store. What is the issue you would like to see better discussed, more discussed, and more sort of put forward on mainstream media?
Well, I think farmers in general are going to be facing more and more regulations. As land becomes more precious, as water becomes more precious, those of us in the Chesapeake Bay area, EPA is looking very hard on what we can put on the amount of nutrients that we can put on the land. I think we are a test case for other watershed areas. So I really think that in the future is going to have a lot of impact on the way we farm.
And we're going to have more of a discussion on that this afternoon. I want to get your read on that, though. Is there a sense that you have, thank you, is there a sense that you have, you know, Megan said at some point the regulation just gets, it's important and necessary, at some point gets ridiculous. What's your sense of regulation?
Well, I think regulation is fine. I think there's no doubt that Chesapeake Bay needs help, but just we're the largest group of that we've been pinpointed. The X is on our back, and they're looking at farmers. And there are a lot of other players in pollution to the bay and things like that that I think we need to take a look at. But farmers are going to take the hit, and we're going to take the brunt of it. And but I still say the bottom line is that we have the safest, most efficient food supply in the world. And I think that's something that's always top line in my mind that we don't need to forget.
So that argues for, I mean, look, we can always streamline regulation, but that argues for some of it.
Yeah.
Jesse, you?
I think that there's not, in a sense, the focus on organic versus conventional takes away from sustainable farming versus unsustainable, and the practices that we employ that are damaging our soil. I think soil is talk about natural resources that are precious. Soil erosion, soil depletion is going to be a crisis that we face in the next 50 years if other farming practices aren't embraced and looked at. And that doesn't seem to be enough of the conversation right now.
I got a tweet for you, Jesse. It says, does equal coverage of unequal science educate or reinforce consumers' confirmation bias? No idea what that question means. I'm really hoping you do.
Could you say it just a little slower?
Yeah. Does equal coverage of unequal science educate or reinforce consumers' confirmation bias?
So if I take that question, I think what they're trying to say is that if you give equal weight to two different sides of an argument, even though one has been proven wrong over time or does not have any kind of scientific confirmation of it, maybe, yeah, make them seem like they're equal. Well, I think one way or the other, the people who are against genetically modified food, it's not necessarily a case of sitting them down and being like, look, science has said this. Over the course of time, I think that the feelings regarding that are so entrenched that it's not really a conversation about that. And in a way, it's kind of like prove to me that it is going to be safe in 10 years, that that my kids aren't going to wake up and we find out that they actually got sick from genetically modified food, and that's going to be a very difficult thing to prove one way or the other. I mean, even if we're saying, look, right now, everything is safe with genetically modified food, the long-term effects, it's kind of like guilty until proven innocent. So do you give equal airplay to both sides of that debate and make I think that if there's enough people who are so fervently against it, that they do at least deserve to have their voices heard, yes.
All right. Another quick tweet for you. Is Megan's Ranch unconventional with constant change and innovation? What is conventional farming?
Oh, that's a great question. Farming is always changing. We have new technology constantly. In terms of right now, we are conventional. We sell our cattle to Harris Ranch, different big feedlots where they're finished out and they go into the grocery store. But I also, because I have that, I can also do my little niche grass-finished, grass-fed market. I have the best of both worlds as far as I'm concerned. And, I'm really actually quite proud of my parents. Ag is pretty much known, well, this is how we've always done it. And I love that my parents don't do that. My dad is very innovative. He has adopted a lot of the new technology from Dr. Grandin with the shoots, the swing, I'm too excited right now. Anyway, yeah, so it's always changing, and I think conventional is just conventional. It's always going to be evolving with anything because of this technology.
And you sort of talked about this. You've technology? You've sort of just integrated it as you've gone along.
Well, we've been very involved in different farm organizations. We rely heavily on what our land-grant universities tell us, Virginia Tech. We've employed no-till, strip-till. We've done everything we can to use less and to produce more. So, you know, that's all we can do.
Would you say if someone were to come down and say, where would you put yourself on the spectrum of innovation in farming?
Well, I mean, I don't have a smartphone that can control an irrigation unit like some people do in the Delta and things like that. But so far as what we do, I think so far as some of the practices that we've done, we're very innovative in a small way. Again, we're not big farmers.
Right. So part of it is there's some innovations you don't have.
Right,
because
we
you
don't
have the
have,
scale.
we don't, yeah, because of the scale. But I would say for what we do, we're very innovative for what we do, and just trying to use less fuel, to use less pesticides, to scout more, to do some things, and you know, not just a blanket treatment for every crop, but you know, we go out and look, and if something needs a pesticide, we apply it. If it doesn't, we don't. You know, but I'd say strip till, no till, things like that, we use a lot less fuel than we ever used to. You know, so things like that have just really changed the way we farm.
Jesse, we have an email that says, how many farms can operate near urban areas? Or put differently, what percentage of the population can actually afford to drive out to the country to meet their farmers? I'm guessing that's, you know, while this is a great idea, if you could drive out to Dee Dee's farm to meet her, it's not really viable for most of the country.
Sure. So I don't actually have the statistics on what percentage. That is kind of why farmers markets are so cute and precious to people, because it gives you the opportunity to actually not have to do very much effort, and the farmer comes to you and you get to meet them and have a conversation with them. Would it be better if people actually drove out and checked out farms? Yeah, I think that definitely. I think that there's no better way to figure out where your food is coming from than to go take a tour of a farm. It may not be that viable because the land surrounding our urban centers are often now developed in some way for residential use, so the farms are farther, the big farms, the high production farms are farther and farther away from our urban centers, so it's not that easy.
I'm still trying to get the idea. I understand why it's interesting for me to talk to Dee Dee or Megan. I'm still not sure what we are trying to achieve, or frankly, what you are trying to achieve with Modern Farmer. What is the benefit of getting more of explaining to people more about how the sausage is made? What's the advantage? People still buy food.
Sure.
Every day. They don't buy less food. We consume. What are we trying to achieve in getting people to better understand food and its production? Because even if many of you think there's a negative perception of food in the market, ultimately, we still eat it all. We still buy it.
Well, I mean, it's just like journalism on anything, right? A better informed readership will make better decisions for themselves and for their lives. They will vote based on the things that they read. They will vote with their pocketbooks when they go to the supermarket. I would say agriculture journalism, just like anything else, is a valuable public service.
What do you think, Dee Dee? What's the advantage to having people understand you and what you do?
I just think people, they still enjoy just the rural countryside, the peacefulness of it, a little escapism for a little bit, and you know, just slow down. You know, cut your phone off, slow down, take a hayride, and just breathe and enjoy it. Enjoy your children when they come out, and I think that's what we miss a lot of, and I think that's something that we can give them a little piece of just for a little bit.
Might just adjust everybody's speed a little bit.
Yeah.
I agree.
Comes out, makes it a. All right. One of the so the issue. I want to go back to the video at the top. Do you think that those perceptions you saw are fair? Do you think that's representative? And do you think, generally speaking, people have? Do they really misconceive your industry, or do they largely get it?
I think I'm pretty misconceived. But why would these people know? I mean, they don't work on a farm. They don't get to see what I see every day. It's like, I don't know what doctors do. So it's, you know, it's... Until you see one. Yeah. So it's definitely, you know, and like the more I can get people engaged with me and the more they understand what I do, it is much, much easier on me. Less regs, you know, less explaining. It's just...
Right. And there's a benefit to you. I think I get that you're providing therapy to the rest of us, which is excellent. But you think it's better for you in the end?
Oh, yes, most definitely, because I just think people just get a connection, and they see real people and what we do and how we work, and yeah, I just think it's just the trust issue as well.
Yeah.
Jesse, where do you guys have been around for about a year, you say?
Yep, that's right.
What do you see happening? What do you think? Obviously, if people get more engaged, they will read more, and then what happens?
I mean, like I said, I think that once you're more involved with the food production system, once you know more, then you shop differently. We also, to be fair, our magazine is not exclusively high journalism. We also provide service information, like if you are buying your first backyard chickens, what breeds are you going to want? Which ones are going to be friendly? Which ones are going to be rude? Or what's the best fence to buy? We just did a very lengthy story on picking out a perfect fence and the considerations you want to put into that. So that's part of it too, is for the people who are not currently involved in agriculture, who on either a small or a large level are moving in that direction. It's service journalism. How do you do that? What are the things you can do?
Do we have? I probably should be taking a break about now, but I want to give anybody else an opportunity. If you have any other questions, to come to the mic. Is that gentleman going to mic? Okay, very good. I just want to go a few more minutes because I think we started a little bit late.
I'm Sudeep Matthew. I'm an Extension Agriculture agent with University of Maryland Extension. We heard today about modern science and validating modern science through independent scientists. And also, Megan, you mentioned about your experience as starting with kids as a 4-H'er. However, over the years, the public funding for research and education, public funding, has decreased because of drastic cuts. As an industry, how are we going to accomplish the task of feeding, we often quoted 9 billion people, and also caring for the earth with this situation?
You were a 4-H
Yes.
kid, were you?
I was 4-H and FFA.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's.
I don't know.
That's a big question.
That's a really big question. What was the gist? Give me a gist here.
Are you asking about sort of education for kids about agriculture?
Things. Dee Dee mentioned about land-grant institutions,
Yeah.
and the impact the land-grant institution had at their farm, and also the reason that we need independent scientists other than the companies, so that the public will have much more acceptance on modern agriculture. So because of the funding situation, these things are a danger. How, as an industry, what are we going to do? Do you still think that that's the case that I'm stating?
Well, I think one thing in education, there's a group called Ag in the Classroom, and I think most every state probably has that. And it's through Farm Bureau, and in our case in Virginia, it's supported almost by every commodity board in the state. And they go out and they educate teachers, like first, second, third grade teachers. They have high school programs, but they come up with creative programs to use farm products and for kids to understand. So sometimes we need to go back, the teachers. The kids can't get it at home because parents are so busy. So if you educate the educators and try to help them and give them some things some products and some lesson plans and things like that. So that's one thing that Ag in the Classroom does. And they really reach a lot of urban children that most of the people that I reach maybe are more rural. But this goes into urban cities and in large school districts and things like that. They get teachers when they're still in college, when they're right before they get out into the real world of teaching. So I think that's a real important area. And I know that most state commodity boards and really support that program. So to me, that's a wonderful way, and a lot of industry support they get. So I think that's a great way to educate the educator. So I think that's real helpful.
Actually, that's so funny. I actually had a couple of classrooms adopt a farmer. So I would come in and bring a saddle one time and bring Silly to a kindergarten class. So Silly's my teacup pig. So they could actually see the pig and, understand, touch and feel. And then doing adult 4-H and letting my friends come out to the ranch and raise their own animal, you know, they also told their friends and their friends and their friends. So it got bigger, and more people heard of it, and you know, it took the mystery away from what I do. And I think farmers need to do that. We need to reach out to the industry, even though we do like to say, oh, I'm so busy, I can't do it, I don't have time. We need to make the time, or we're not going to be here very much longer.
Well, thank you for your question. It was as much statement as question, but in a very meaningful way. So I appreciate that. I think you've put out a good topic for us to be thinking about. I want to thank my panelists, Megan, Dee Dee, and Jesse. I'm sorry. I had in my mind, I was about to call you Seth, because Seth is coming up next. I've truncated our coffee break a little bit because we want to start Seth's session on time at 10:30, but y'all don't need half an hour to drink coffee, so it's okay. When you come back, you're going to be having a great conversation. Mark Gunther's going to be interviewing Seth Goldman, one of the co-founders of Honest Tea, which is a remarkable story that you're going to love to hear. I don't know how many of you. I encouraged everybody who got one of these books to read it before the session, even if you just got it an hour ago, because it's really good, and it's an easy read because it's basically written like a comic book. I want to thank you all for kicking us off today. What a great discussion. I think we've all learned a lot from you, and thank you so much. And please show your appreciation for our panelists. If you guys could be back in your seats by 10:25, that would be great. Thank you.